What's up, guys? Welcome back to Disturbing the Priest. I'm your host, Brandon Baddock. We are joined here by the Council of Doomers. We have Nate Fillers, as always, um, Julian Rose of Nuclear Funeral, and I think he has like a solo project or something. And Kevin Brady. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
That's three comedians and a musician. And the topic today is great bands that lost their mojo. You know, sometimes you can't keep it forever, especially if you're pumping out albums. Some of these bands, have been doing it 40 years. You can't do it forever. One of the issues, and like something I see a lot as like a pattern, is like I was trying to find like a very diverse group of bands, but I hate to say it, like a lot of the bands I chose are very mainstream or not mainstream, but like more popular, more of the popular metal bands instead of like a more like a lesser known, like F list, X list, like metal band. And I think that might be because, the more popular a band is, I think they feel more pressured to like put out better releases and whatnot. And I think that really affects the creative process.
Yeah, it does.
Let's jump into the first one I have on my list. I wrote Metallica.
So did I.
I think their best album since the Black Album was Death Magnetic. I don't think anything really came close. I think if they just kept going in a like maybe a heavier direction, like they could have put out something really cool, but I feel like just they got way too experimental and their egos just got way too big. And I think that really hurt the band. And especially like you look at them now, and I don't think they've been able to like get back on their feet since then. What do you guys think Metallica has lost it? Do you think they still have their
ever since
drive?
Cliff. Ever since Cliff for me.
Really?
Yeah. I mean
So that's their first three.
We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get back into it, but like I really like Master of Puppets was the first album I ever bought with my own money. So I was just like, hell yeah. And then like it just seems to kind of trickle its way. It's not like a fast drop off. It's like the album after that, like little less. So
yeah, fair enough. It's funny because their most successful albums, like the Black Album, which is their fifth record. Yeah, their fifth record. And then the drop off was so like giant. Like it was so, and like don't get me wrong, like I love Load and Reload, but I'll be honest, like I don't think like it's a good record, but it's not a good Metallica album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's 4 LPs between both records. And that could have, if they just combined it into just one LP, it could have been pretty good, I guess. But I don't know. Kevin, have you listened to Load, Reload at all?
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of like right between the two. I don't want to say that they stopped being good once Cliff died, but after the Black Album came out and they had that huge commercial success, it was no longer, well, now we need to be beholden to our fans. We're actually successful. We're on MTV. We're on radio. Okay, let's put out that next radio metal album and keep making mountains of dollars. And yeah, I mean, since really the Black Album, Death Magnetic was probably the closest to the original vibe of the band, but like you really can't recapture that. I mean, totally different time and place. A thrash band was dangerous in the 80s, and now it's just like oh, Johnny's in a thrash metal band. Oh, those kids.
2013 also, what a whole different era for music. Also, just like again, like I was talking about condensing some of these LPs. Death Magnetic, that's a double LP. If they made that just just a one solid LP, just like a 45-minute record, and also the production sucks. That's like another big thing on Death Magnetic. Like it really, like I want to say that album's really good, but there's a lot of faults in it. And Hardwired, I don't know, man. It's tough. I don't like they have some decent kind of I want to say like dad metal out.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what they are now.
But it just sucks. Because it's so awkward. Like I feel like once you kind of jump off that that bridge into being like very experimental and just doing whatever you want, it's hard to like get back on track of being like a threat if you're putting out country songs, and there's a country song on Reload.
Oh yeah,
it's hard to like, and we even like with Saint Anger, it's like we literally hear the growing pains in the hard transition back into them trying to be like, all right, we're thrash metal, don't forget, we're a metal band. And it's like really it's not really that believable. I think Megadeth did a way better job of staying in the lane and like putting out good music, but I don't know.
Like even with Megadeth, even pick your preferred bad album from them, stylistically at least stays relatively consistent. But yeah, like when I heard Unforgiven 3, like I didn't know what it was. Like I just heard it playing somewhere. It's like, okay, new Metallica, not too bad. Like, why do I know this riff? What is it? Are they plagiarizing themselves? What the?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's the third installment of a song that you only needed to do once.
Yeah.
True.
Crazy. And it's and I also want to touch on this. Dave Reese. So Dave's been on a spree, Dave Mustaine, of just like revealing like personal conversations he's had with people. And one of the ones recently was he used to like have a lot of phone calls with James Hetfield a lot. And Dave like revealed recently that like James told him that the last 4 Metallica albums bombed in his eyes, which is like pretty big. And that's really like nail in the coffin right there. Like even if the band thinks the like last 4 projects kind of suck. I don't know, man. It's another issue I have with like a lot of these bands are the thing where like they feel like they just have to put out records just to put out albums.
Yeah, stay relevant.
Exactly. Which like I don't know. I feel like I rather you not put out a record than have to like crap out like just
it's so forced. It's like I think it's hard to gauge too, because it's like when music becomes like your full-time job, it changes like your perspective of it. Like I was in a band and I loved writing the music until it was like writing for other people. And that's, I feel like what Metallica has become, because they're so big, they can't really write from themselves anymore, even though technically they could because they're Metallica, but who knows what the label is forcing them to do. So
yeah, and I don't think the label's too hard on Metallica.
Probably not.
There must be some pressure, you know what I mean? Because like I think they're like literally the biggest touring band.
I mean, I can't imagine that a label really can flex too much strength over a band like Metallica, because you reach a certain threshold, a certain point where you are the brand. Like you just happen to be releasing through this company. If they just said, "Hey, you know what? We're done with this label. Everything's gonna be. We're going independent again. They're doing everything themselves." They have the infrastructure. They can figure out how to do this on their own if they wanted to. So like if James Hetfield is even saying, yeah, the last 4 albums didn't feel right. We didn't like them. They didn't come out the way we wanted them to. Okay, don't release an album.
Yeah, don't release it if you hate it.
Like their label's literally named after a Metallica song. You know what I mean? Like they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, that's fine. I just meant like for like a contract purposes. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I'm assuming nothing, but I always like want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like,
yeah,
but it's probably more so that they're just like they're probably just burnt out.
I think so. Yeah. They tour endlessly. Like Metallica's always on the road. Lars can barely play. Lars even said recently that he's like, I can see Metallica going like another 20 years. It's like, dude, I can't see you going another 2 years. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like even Metallica puts out a lot of live videos and some of them like I'll listen to them like, it's so not quite my tempo, Lars. I don't know. It's not really I can't see them like putting out another like great record. Also with their first like 4 or 5, I guess, like looming over them at all times. And like with the amount of times they've played all those songs on the road, it's like, I don't know, man. Plus a lot of those songs like borrow some like Misfits riffs, some Merciful Fate riffs. So it's like, I guess go start listening to like old 80s metal again. Maybe you can snag a couple riffs for the new record, but I don't know, man. It's Metallica. Does anyone have any final words for final thoughts for Metallica?
Well, yeah, I don't know, just like going back to what you were saying like a minute ago is like they don't have to put out music. Like they can just like Tool like took like 13 years off.
Yeah.
They can do that if they want. It's like they don't really have a need to pump out like albums constantly.
And I don't think they should either. You know what I mean? I think if anything, like if a riff comes in mind, like they should do something with it. And maybe over time, like all those riffs will lead to like, hey, it's like, oh my God, we have 4 songs. And then that will slowly snowball into something. But instead of like with especially Hardwired, we're like, all right, we're doing the album now. We are in the studio and let's just, think of something. I think it should be that where it's a little more natural. Again, if a riff comes to mind, let's just do something with it. I don't know. I'm not their manager, but
that's why I have to believe it's got to be some sort of contract thing, because I think you're right. Like they literally don't have to do anything anymore. They could coast off of what they've done. They can coast off their legacy. They could never write one more song and they'd still be fine. So it's not like they're writing because they're desperate for money.
Yeah.
Or are they? I don't know.
I like again,
shows are expensive,
Yeah.
I don't know. All that money they lost from Napster pirating their music 20 years ago.
I think that's where I got a bad taste in my mouth for it.
A lot of people did, actually. That era killed so many Metallica fans because that was like when Saint Anger came out too.
Yeah.
Like
they're telling people not to share their music for free. Like half the people that got into them didn't get their albums as a bootleg from a friend of a friend.
Yeah. I've gotten like half my Metallica albums at Savers. It's like, what?
Do you guys know what's going on with Twitter right now? With like the blue check mark verification that you can just pay for. I saw somebody posing as Metallica and wrote like this big thing like, we got it wrong, our music is now free, you should download it, like we're sorry. And then like Metallica wrote like, this isn't us, please, like our stuff isn't free. Like
that's definitely Lars on the computer typing that. I'd love to see Napster come back.
Yeah.
That'd be so. Imagine if Metallica did that. Like they're just like, hey, we're just dropping all our songs for free. We make enough money touring. Like that'd be. I'd actually like have so much respect for them if they did that, but I don't think they ever would.
If they get a new drummer, then it could happen.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know. It'll never happen. Lars pretty much is Metallica at this point. Yeah, there would just be one. Oh my God, if Lars left, then Metallica and Megadeth would have the same amount of original members. That'd be so crazy. That's actually so crazy because like a lot of people will make fun of Megadeth, like, oh, there's barely any original members. It's just Dave. Metallica only has like 2 members. That's
Yeah.
2 Daves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's crazy because Kirk, he's not original. Rob isn't, but I don't know, man. Metallica is something. Hardwired actually came out, I think, last week, 6 years ago. I don't know, man. It's great. I think that was a solid record, kinda. I think Spit Out the Bone was excellent on that one. Again, could have been a 45-minute record, but they really had to drive it into the ground. All right. Here's another one. And this is again like another kind of classic metal band. Iron Maiden. I'm not really a fan of what that band turned into.
Yeah. I can agree.
I really wanted to bring up this band just to make the transition from how Metallica started just releasing less quality stuff and longer records, where Maiden, oh my God, they literally went from 40-minute, 37-minute albums to like, what is it, 2 hour long records. I think their new one is like 4 LPs. Like Jesus Christ, every song is like 15 minutes. Just insane.
Yeah.
And like I'm not sure how I feel about that, especially Iron Maiden. Like what number are they on for records? I don't know, man. Do you guys have a problem with that?
Pushing 20.
Yeah, like if you're on your 20th record like that, I feel like I don't get what is the deal with bands wanting to it's like, hey, we gotta top our last one, so who needs quality? Let's just make it like a 4-hour long record. Let's make the album 4 hours.
Don't want to do that sometime, actually. Let's do like an 8-hour album.
Every album you'll put out, just add another hour.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's
12-hour doom record.
It's 3 songs.
It's 5 riffs.
Yeah.
3 songs, 2 riffs. But
3 songs, 2 riffs.
Yeah. No, I actually found it really funny when we saw when we saw Iron Maiden like a few years ago. They were like, we're not playing anything new.
Yeah, they didn't play a single thing new. It's like, why'd you put out like a 5-hour long album then if you're not going to play any of it? That's Metallica. I saw them recently too. They didn't play anything past like I think it was like 88. Like they played all their 80s stuff. It's like,
oh wow.
Because that's what people like. That's like their good stuff.
Yeah, I guess, but it's like I'm not really into that. I really don't like when bands. I like when a band, if you put out a song and the band likes it, I at least own it. I say play it. I don't think bands should just be playing their hits or their, if you're gonna put out a 5-hour long record, at least play one song off it. Which, granted, that'd be like 30 minutes of the the concert, but
the entire encore would just be Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.
Yeah. And that's and in terms of like their new stuff, Rhyme is like one of their shorter songs now.
Yeah.
Like that's like a radio single now. Where like it's like their new record, every side is a song. Tool kind of did that too with their new record, Fear Inoculum. It's like I think the vinyl's like again like 4 LPs.
Yeah, it's like all long songs except the weird like ambient shit in between.
Yeah, with like Chocolate Chip Trip.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Like bands, like the older and the longer they're around, put out longer records. Like I really don't understand. Are they confiscating for something? compensating.
I mean, to some degree, it's got to be masturbatory. It's like, hey, look at how good we are. We're going to write an entire album and nothing's going to be less than 15 minutes long because we're that amazing.
Yeah. So it must, I can definitely see it being like an ego thing. You know what I mean? Even like the last Metallica records too. Like Saint Anger too. That's also like a double LP. And I'm sorry I'm measuring things in vinyl, but it's like,
it's fine.
You know, you look at Master of Puppets, and that's a single LP. And that's like, oh my God, a legendary record. All the best albums, I feel like, you know, crunch it down to like 45 minutes. There definitely is an exception for double LPs or like, you know, maybe over an hour albums, but I don't know, man. Like, especially if you're putting out your like 25th record, like how much are you like ready to shove into the world?
Well, I mean, there's reason to break that shit up and actually release them as separate records, not just as one thing. Like you know, System of a Down, when they released Toxicity, they were like, we have all this extra material that we really like, but it doesn't fit this album. And then when it started leaking, they were like, fuck it, just make another album. And they released Steal This Album. But then Hypnotize, Mesmerize, those are two separate albums. Like they were released months apart. So like just because you have all these songs, good, bad, and different, whatever, hey, we want to release them all together, break them up. Use Your Illusion. Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
That was two different albums. So
honestly, Guns N' Roses. Yeah. And I totally agree with that, you know. But the thing is, I feel like that goes to show, you know, you look at an album like Death Magnetic, and I'm saying that's like the best Metallica album since the Black Album. I can't see that as two records. You know what I mean? Like I can see I feel like there's definitely an A and B side of that album, if that makes sense. Like there's some albums, like again, like going back to like Puppets or something, A and B is like equal. That whole album front to back is awesome. But you definitely like, especially these albums, like I guess there's a few exceptions, but there's definitely like a lot of filler, like a lot of just, I feel like there was this riff that went on for like 10 minutes that didn't really have a payoff. We go into a solo, that's another 15. It's like, it's a lot of it just seems very just like, they're like, you know, it's streaming, it's Spotify. We can do whatever we want. Let's just, hey, 3-minute solos, make it 10 minutes. Who cares? It's Spotify. We can put a 20-hour album out if we want. There's no, you know, limit. But I think that kind of helped a lot of bands though. Especially in the age of vinyl. Because you definitely had that. It's like, all right, we got to get it on one LP. They were very cautious with like how long a song was, how long a riff went, a solo. And I feel like just because of that, they were paying more attention to like the song structure and the song itself and the flow of the album also, where now it's like flow of the album. It's all about what gets on the playlist and what doesn't. Who cares? And I think it's just like a lot of bands just like throwing whatever at the wall and seeing what sticks. Is it a good song? Who cares? Just put it on. Release whatever kind of album we want. You bring up Guns N' Roses though, and I want to say I would claim Guns N' Roses to be another one of those bands that, you know, really lost their mojo.
Yeah. Hopping in the way back machine. When I was in college, my school introduced a radio station. They didn't have one. So they brought in a radio station. It was internet-based radio station. And I was the hard rock and heavy metal DJ. And our station liaison, like faculty advisor, came in one day and he said, "Oh, Kevin, you're never going to believe it, but I got a bootleg copy of Guns N' Roses' greatest hits." I just looked at him and said, "We already have a copy of Appetite for Destruction. Like we don't need this." And he looked at the track list and he was like, Oh, like
Their first
I
record's amazing.
yeah, but when you have a record like that, when you have a record like Appetite, you're already starting at 100. You don't cop it. You really can't. So even though they do have a lot of good songs after that, everything's a step down. Everything's a step back.
Yeah. And like I know
Definitely.
there's a lot of albums like Chinese Democracy gets a lot of hate, but like I actually dig that record. But again, it didn't really hold a candle to Appetite.
Chinese Democracy is like, to me, it's not a Guns N' Roses album. It's kind of just like Axl doing whatever he wants. I think there's some good songs on there. But it's definitely like not Guns N' Roses, like the vibe's off.
Wasn't Buckethead on that one?
Yeah.
I think it was,
yeah. I actually dig that record.
Yeah, no, it gets a lot of hate, but I think I actually dig a lot of the songs.
Yeah. But like you also have like the Spaghetti Incident, which
Wasn't it like a cover album?
is it? I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Also, let me just say it's like the worst name and cover of an album I think I've seen.
Yeah.
I gotta look this up.
It's just like a picture of spaghetti. Like that the band has a lot of cool themes and whatnot, and like a lot of cool, like especially their first record. It's a really cool. It's almost like the band's almost logo. It's like,
Yeah.
I can't really describe it, but it's cool. And same with their next two, but
that's
they're
awesome.
like, screw it, just take a picture of your next dinner, and we'll make that the record.
It's like SpaghettiOs style.
Like,
yeah,
it's not even like good looking spaghetti.
Yeah, it looks like it's been like overcooked. Yeah. Let's critique the pasta.
I love how like on the Wikipedia page it says not to be confused with the linguine incident.
What was the linguine incident? Oh, it was actually a hate crime. Oh my god.
Oh no.
Oh, it's the spaghetti incident with a question mark.
Oh yeah, it's a question, I guess. Spaghetti incident? Like, what does that even mean? I don't
the
really...
linguine incident was a movie with David Bowie in it.
Okay.
Let's get off track.
Yeah.
Was that their last record? What was the last Guns N' Roses album even?
That was a couple. Like, I didn't.
Is
they
anyone
release
an
one
expert
recently?
on that band?
No.
I thought they released.
They haven't
one,
released
recently.
an album in like.
I thought they did like last
decades,
year or something.
Right?
What? They keep on remastering Use Your Illusion. So.
Yeah,
I mean, not like remastered, but
yeah, like new.
Gotcha. I think what you might be thinking of, I think they released a song recently. And I say recently, like 3 years ago. Yeah.
Looks like Chinese Democracy.
Yeah, their last record was 2008. Wow. 2008, then the Spaghetti Incident was 93.
Yeah.
Spaghetti Incident was the last album with Slash until he joined again.
Well, that just goes to show we were talking about like a band gets to a point where it's like we don't even have to put out music.
Yeah.
The last album was in 2008, and then before that was 93. I think they just have to like put out an album every few
every
decades.
15 years.
Yeah, every 15 years. Guys, remember us? Remember Guns N' Roses?
I mean, imagine if bands had like action figure lines or like merchandise like that. Like they wouldn't even ever create an album ever again.
Yeah.
Like, they could just live off the toys.
Well, that's kind of what Kiss
I mean, like
does.
look at like Guns N' Roses. Like they have like deals with like what's like Old Navy and shit like that. Like you can get like like shirts with their logo at like any clothing store. It's like they're not they're not doing badly in terms of
Yeah,
like money off of like merchandise.
Yeah, it's licensing. Basically, you have these companies like an Old Navy, and like, hey, what are licenses that we can like purchase the rights to manufacture? And like Kiss, AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, they're like, yeah, just give us the money. We don't give a shit.
Yeah.
do what you want, just as long as the check clears.
They pretty much just become brands. Like a lot of people, like there's those jokes where you have those like those girls or whatever, or like just like teens like wearing a Nirvana shirt and they think it's like a clothing brand. But it's like that's not far from what these bands have turned into.
No, I mean like a lot of like I think like one of the biggest things that sets apart like a successful band from like an unsuccessful band, other than the music, which honestly doesn't even really matter that much because there are loads of shit bands out there, is like if they can market themselves as like a product in some way or the other.
Which like so sad. You know what I mean? Like it's people trying to make a living, I guess,
Yeah.
God forbid Lars has to sell his painting from have you guys seen some kind of monster documentary where like Metallica starts losing money, so like Lars like he gets like super depressed and he has to sell like some like $5 million painting in his house, and it's like it's like, wow, dude, we're very we'll definitely buy the new album Saint Anger or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Think about
merchandising.
Lars.
Yeah, poor Lars. A band, talk about merchandising. Kiss. They were really the first to really like, lean into that. And they're one of the like, people are being buried in Kiss coffins. I don't think any other band has that level of like where the fans are so obsessed with the merchandise.
I'm pretty sure like you can like hire like the guy to like go to your wedding or some shit too.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Really?
Yeah.
They're all hired
like $20,000 or something, and he officiates or whatever the word is.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's Gene Simmons for you.
Yeah.
How much for Tommy Thayer?
Anytime Gene Simmons is in an interview, there's always like some giant product next to him. I think like the last time he did an interview, it was like every question he like made the direction go to the Gene Simmons vault, which is like something it's like this $20,000 vault you buy that has like Gene Simmons like merch in it. And he's just like doing an interview and there's this giant safe next to him. He's like, good question. Reminds me of the stuff in the Gene Simmons vault. And that was like every question. But that's like what it takes. It takes a psychopath for like a band to become, and like a band see Kiss and go, oh, let's try to do something like that. But like Kiss really, they almost became addicted to it, I feel like. And I hate to say it, like they're another band that kind of lost their drive and like their mute. Like, oh my God, you look at their later records. Nate, this is me and Nate talked about this on a past episode, but they have an album called The Music for the Elder. And it's so Kiss started to trend set or wanted to trend chase, I should say. Well, they started as trend setting, and then so Tommy came out and all these like almost like proggy concept records. So like, hey, let's do one. And it is the worst record I think I've ever heard in my life. The music, it's Music from the Elder.
Yeah, I listened to it and I was like, oh my God.
So I did some more research about it. So what it was going to be was Kiss wanted to make a movie. And the movie was going to be called The Elder. And so they're like, oh, and they wrote the script. Paul Stanley, the singer, wrote the script. And they're like, oh, this is going to be a blockbuster. Let's make the soundtrack. So they made the soundtrack, and then the movie got scrapped. So they just put out the soundtrack to a movie that doesn't exist. So that's why it's called From the Elder. The Elder's the movie. So it's like music from the Elder. And it's just, I'm not sure, you might have seen the cover. It's just like a hand on a door. It's a really weird looking thing, but it's like it bombed so bad. It was like the worst. It did terrible. And their later stuff too doesn't hold a candle to any of their stuff now, and like kind of sucks, like even just as a record. Paul Stanley even said like the reason, and Kiss have come forward and said, we don't put out music anymore. We're done with making music. And the reason was because they're saying people always hold our early stuff high because they grew up with those albums, and they're more than just music for a lot of people. They're like nostalgia and whatnot. And I respect that. And I understand that. But to just like completely cut off your creativity and like, from writing music, like I feel like that's kind of a cop out. It's like putting out records. I think Kiss kind of just like got way too lost in their own head and ego, and that really affected their creative process.
I mean,
Like trying to be like, what's gonna sell? What's gonna sell?
They're not even trying anymore. I mean, look what just came out recently, like the allegations of them lip syncing. It's like,
yeah,
they're not even putting any effort in. It's just whether they have to or not, they're just not doing it. So
yeah, their farewell tour's been going on for like 20 years now also.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that them being on a farewell tour was a joke 20 years ago. They've been retiring for 30 years.
It's amazing.
All right, here's one. I'm not sure if I agree with this one or not. How do you guys feel about Ozzy Osbourne? Do you think he lost it? Do you think, because he had a new record come out recently? He's had a bunch actually recently. Because I want to say he does, but like I also kind of dig the new record. I'm not sure if any of you guys have heard any of the tracks off it or whatnot.
No,
but
I haven't heard any of...
it's very loud. That's all I'll say about it. I don't get what it is with like all these like old artists, like metal artists. Like it's like, hey, I know what will sell. Let's just put up like the loudest release of all time. Like whatever will make people's ears ring. That'll definitely be the selling point, which and Metallica did it too with Death Magnetic. I forget if Hardwired was super loud or not, but Death Magnetic was like so fuzzy. I think it was just like unlistenable. Even on Rock Band or whatever, there was like a Metallica Guitar Hero or something. They had to actually like remix, I'm pretty sure, the Death Magnetic songs. Did I get that right?
There was, so from what I remember is that I think Guitar Hero, I think it was Guitar Hero, they got like an early like version of like the song like before it was like mastered, and the mastering on like the full release is horrific.
Yeah.
So the Guitar Hero version is like genuinely like way better sounding than
Which
like
is
the
crazy.
official release.
That's funny.
If you want to hear a really like, if you want to hear the song properly mixed or whatever, you have to have an Xbox 360.
Yeah, you have to.
Or you just go on like YouTube.
Is it on YouTube?
I'm sure.
100%.
Oh yeah, it must be, right?
It was like, it would be kind of crazy if it wasn't.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Another band I can't help but say is Dream Theater.
That was one of the ones I was thinking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We also like talked about this on like a past discussion or whatnot. Kevin, are you familiar with Dream Theater?
Yeah, I have controversial opinions on Dream Theater.
Oh yeah.
Like, you can't make any type of argument against anybody, like their songwriting ability, their musicianship. Every one of them is phenomenal. For me, there's just a line where it's too, I like pretentious shit, but like, it's just, I can't sit down and listen to a 43-minute song.
Yeah.
There's a reason why classical music is broken up into movements, and you can listen to this 1 4-minute piece of an operetta, like, because that's the good part of it.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
Yeah, I have opinions.
I mean, it's basically just like a whole album of soloing. This is like everybody does different solo stuff, and I can see that getting very tiring quick too.
But yeah, what's the album they did with Panic Attack?
Octavarium.
Octavarium. Yeah, that's how long is that? The title track of that album?
Oh, I think that one's like 20 minutes or something.
Like the title tracks, it's crazy to me that the title track of an album could be 20 minutes. I think I've listened to it like twice.
Yeah. And how much James LaBrie is?
It's a good album though. It's like one of their better ones in my opinion.
It's These Walls. Is that another track on it? The Evil Within. I might be butchering all these names. There's a lot. I do remember a lot of good tracks on it, but yeah, it's like, again, and I guess like you can have that opinion on like most prog metal bands, because a lot of them are just like, there's some, I feel like the death metal ones, like the tech death ones, are very like the most they'll go is like 10 minutes. But for some reason, when it comes to clean vocals, it's like, oh, let's make it a half hour. Who cares?
This is the emotional piece.
Yeah. I feel like with Dream Theater, I like a bunch of their like older albums, but like every time they release an album now, I just like, I kind of skim it and I'm like, I'm over this. It's like, it's like not new. It just feels like, I don't know. Like
I feel that a lot. I feel that with so many different bands, especially like the older bands. Like I was gonna chime in when we were talking about what's their name? What's the second band?
Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden. Yeah, thank you. I just had a brain fart. I'm sorry. But like they almost have like a formula down. It's like a lot of triplets, a lot of galloping,
going to war.
A lot of like, a lot of like, power ballad vocals, and it's like, okay, they have a formula. And then you have like other bands that are like, all right, we kind of got bored and they just completely shift genres. And I get that now, because I feel like a lot of the bands that we're talking about right now never really shifted genres. They kind of just were like, they just kind of put out similar things. Like AC/DC is a great example of that. AC/DC has put out the same album how many times?
Yeah.
AC/DC it's the Doom joke from earlier. They have 5 riffs and they just change the key and the tempo.
There's this like interview with like Angus Young or whatever, and the interviewer asks like, what do you say to those who say that AC/DC only has one riff? He said, it's a good riff. And I mean, like, he's not like wrong.
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
It's a vibe. I forget what it was, but I think they released an album in like 2013. I listened to. It's like, it's AC/DC,
Rock or
it's
bust,
cool.
I think.
Yeah. I don't think it's like a bad album. It's just not, they didn't do anything new.
Yeah,
it's groundbreaking.
It's just them going, hey, check the time. We got to put out another AC/DC record. Their new one.
There was another. Sorry, go ahead, Brandon.
That's all good. Their new one, Power Up, came out a couple years ago too, and I that was like one I actually it came out. My roommate was like a huge AC/DC fan. He's still alive. I don't know why I said his name in past tense. But he's a huge AC/DC fan, and he like bought the vinyl. and like we're listening to him, like he's like, it's good, it's good. I'm like, yeah, it's it's you like Back in Black. It's like the same thing. I
Yeah.
don't know, man. Like the issue with that, when a band just like keeps just like, hey, let's just put out the same album. It's like I rather just why listen to the new AC/DC record when like Back in Black is a
Yeah,
thing. You know what I
exactly.
mean? At least with like all these other bands, like even Metallica, like they do experiment a little bit, and like they always have done that. Even like their old stuff, like they've definitely tried new stuff every album. But I don't know. I'm not crazy about the idea of a band doing that. Nate, you were gonna
Oh, I was
say
just gonna say there was another interview, but it could have been the same interview where he was where what's his name from AC/DC was talking about like, uh, are you embarrassed that you have essentially put out 10 albums that have sound the same? And he's like, come on, man, we've put out 11 albums that have sounded the same.
Yeah. I
just
didn't
gotta
like
own it, you know.
Yeah, they do. So
Do you guys have any any bands you think have kind of lost their way?
mhm. Is it, does it count if they find it again, or is it
I'm
just
curious. Well, I'm curious what you're gonna say.
well, I was
Yeah,
one for
sure.
me is Opeth for sure, because Opeth started off like really fucking great, and then they just kind of experimented a little bit too much,
Yeah,
became a little bit too experimental for my taste. But their latest album that they just put out is right back to like their older stuff. It's like one of the few bands that I've seen kind of go sour and then just come back and be like, okay, well, this is very similar to their older stuff,
it's
and
a pretty
it's
sick
great.
record.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was blown away because like there's a few bands that I've held on hope for. They're one of them, and I was so happy to hear their latest album, and I was just like, hell yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're actually, I know like a lot, there's a few records of theirs that a lot of people like hate on. I actually like all their stuff.
Really?
Yeah, every album I've listened to of like, and I'm pretty sure I've listened to their discography. Like I actually dig like all their records. Even like there's some, and I'll admit there's some like weird stuff. There's some like some weird songs and whatnot. But
Yeah.
like I dig it. I don't mind it. I respect the band and I love their sound. Um, and I don't know. I haven't really have gotten that with Opeth, but that's a very common thing I've heard with the band.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the fact that they have taken their sound and played with it as opposed to just like keeping it the same and you know, but I don't know, there's a lot of instances where I was like, this is so experimental that it's almost goofy. And it
Yeah.
and it
I
seems
like
like,
that. Yeah.
I mean,
But
yeah,
I understand that.
but when you
You know what I
compare
mean?
it to like Blackwater Park,
Yeah.
and there
Yeah.
and that goofiness, it's like, oh, it's so hard to put those two next to each other. I don't
Totally.
know,
Yeah.
but
Kevin, do you have
Opeth was
any?
one of them.
I actually had three, but I think the one that really, cause two of them, like one isn't really a band anymore. The other one, I don't know if they've released an album in the
So
last
what were your
many years.
three? I'm just curious.
So first and foremost, and all of these are bands that I really loved when I first heard them. Mudvayne. The first two Mudvayne albums, they were solid. Like, okay, this is different. This is
And that's new metal, right?
interesting. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
keep in mind, when I was first getting into music, we're talking like late 90s, early 2000s. So that was like what's starting to pop up on the radio before, oh well, there's other music that's like this that's not on the
Yeah.
radio.
Mhm.
Well,
So
something had to kill grunge, you know what I mean?
God have mercy. But yeah, their first album, we're talking 20 years ago it came out, and I can still put it on, listen to it, and it's very, in comparison to the time, it's pretty experimental. There's a lot of weird time signatures. Not really much in the way of like genre blending, but it's a little bit offbeat. And that kind of set them apart from a lot of other new metal bands. So, hey, this is what made them successful. Second album, they leaned into it a little too hard. So it turned off some people. So by the time they came back with their third album, it was, okay, we're just doing rock radio metal now. And it's like, ah. And then eventually they broke up and they formed Hell Yeah. And no, hell no. No, thank you. But yeah, another one. This one's tough because I literally saw their first performance in Massachusetts ever, like first tour. Avenged Sevenfold.
You were telling me about that.
Yeah. So
who opened?
Like,
just so
they,
you can tell.
They
everyone.
opened.
They opened. I thought
that's a.
Wow.
Oh no, we'll
MCR.
get to the headlining tour. Yeah. So their first time playing in Massachusetts, they opened for Shadows Fall and Mushroom Head. And then their first headlining tour, like 8 months later, My Chemical Romance opened for them. And My Chemical Romance, nope. I saw them. I was like, wow, do not get it. And it was before Black Parade. Like, it was before I'm Not Okay. I'm just like, I'm thoroughly indifferent about this band.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was my mistake, I guess. But yeah, Avenged Sevenfold, like their first two records, it was the first time really that a newer band that I had come across was actually doing solos. Like, everything was drop tune, chug, chug, chug. Maybe there's a lead, but they were actually doing like 80s inspired solos. And holy shit, yeah, you didn't do that. Like, that's something you didn't hear for 15 years. So, second album, Unholy Confessions, come out. They're still doing like early days of like deathcore and metalcore before it really started leading into the into the mainstream. So when they announced their third album was coming out, and I hear Beast and the Harlot, I'm like, oh, gross! Like, what? What happened to you guys? And just completely turned me off.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of their stuff since then, but I just never got back into them. And
their last release
yeah.
was 26. That was The Stage, I think, their last album.
And I think that was the one record they did without their original drummer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was Mike Portnoy on that one? Because Mike Portnoy was in that band for
well, he joined because their drummer died. So like their original I say original, maybe like just long-term drummer died in a car accident or something like that. And they were like, we're really bummed, but we know he would want us to continue. So here's Mike Portnoy in his 15th band at the same time. Because he's Portnoy. But yeah, I kept up somewhat. I heard new material. And I was just like, it's just. I got a lot of kids to appreciate guitar solos, so I mean, hey, thank you for that. But this one, I know this is the one that they're still around. They're still releasing music, and I know we'll get some people pissed off at me. Slipknot.
Interesting.
I was a huge Slipknot fan. When the self-titled album came out, it really was. It was shocking, and still to this day, like the mixing of it, the recording of it, Joey Jordison's drum tones on it, like still visceral sounding. Iowa, loved it. And then when Chapter 3 came out, I was really excited about it. And it just was such a change from the first two albums, in my opinion, that I was like, okay, it's different. I don't hate it. But then everything after that was going way too stone sour for me.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
So I still really love Slipknot, the first two albums. I can appreciate some of their singles, but I just they lost me at some point. They lost the room for me. And hey, doesn't matter. They're still playing 25 years later. They're still touring arenas around the world, and you know, they've lost members and still found a way to keep going. So hey, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong in this, but just
I don't disagree.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I'm not the biggest Slipknot fan. But yeah, their first two records, I could admit they're amazing. Really awesome. And I've listened to like their recent stuff. They had a new record come out kind of recently, I believe. And
Yeah.
it didn't really do anything for me personally. But all right. Cool. Julian, do you have any bands? Did I steal your one pick, Dream Theater?
I don't.
Your two, Dream Theater and Guns N' Roses?
Yeah, I'm not sure, like off the top of my head. For the most part, like I just kind of very generally like if a band puts out like an album that I don't like, or they go in like a different direction or whatever, I'm just like, all right, they're just doing their thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There aren't like that many bands that I really like consider are like they like started becoming bad. It's just, I just maybe don't resonate with like the new material as much anymore.
Totally.
So
That's
that's
a
kind
really
of like
great point.
my philosophy with this, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And that's like a good thing because it's so easy to say that sucks or that's not good.
Yeah, it's
And,
like
and
someone
it's
likes it probably.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
fine.
Yeah. What a great note to end this on. A very negative, like just this band sucks. This band also sucks. That was a very nice resolution to this whole thing.
Fair.
Well, thank you guys for being on. Nate, you have that show still coming up,
Yeah, December 4th.
right? December 4th, venue.
Lyric Stage in Boston.
Nice. Awesome. Kevin, do you have any dates kind of shows?
Wednesday, the Pint in Worcester, and
Awesome.
winter's tough for me, but I got some stuff that's fingers crossed in the early part of next year. So
Nice. And Julian has a album coming out.
Yep.
Or I guess we both do.
Return to Funeral
Return to
by
Funeral.
Nuclear Funeral, coming out December 3rd.
Damn, I wish we rehearsed that so we could have like said it at the same time.
Here, wait.
You'll get it
Let's
in
do
editing.
Maybe we should
Nuclear Funeral.
return
to Funeral. December.
Someone's just getting
they're really
worse
asking
every
too much
time.
for comedians and musicians to have timing. Like, figure your shit out.
It's not the timing as much as just the order of the words.
The structure.
But yeah.
All right.
No, it's gonna be good.
I want to end with a question. Did you guys know that Sugar Ray's first album was metal?
Yes, I did.
I did not.
Yep.
I am definitely going to check that out right now.
The Goo Goo Dolls were signed to Metal Blade Records.
What?
Yeah, that is fact.
No
Look that
way.
shit up.
It's pretty
Oh
funny.
yeah. Yep. And they stayed a three-piece the whole time. It's been the original band, I think, the entire time.
Metal, that's insane.
Yeah.
Metal Blade's like one of my favorite labels. Wow, that blew my mind. Jesus Christ.
The more you know.
Well, hey, thank you guys for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. I'm Brandon Baddock, and this has been Disturbing the Priest.